name is Frank Lucarell. I'm going to be presenting to you today for my senior project, and my topic is mass media and social media and how it affects our self-concept. Self-concept is how we view ourselves, not only in terms of body image, but also in terms of well-being and overall just how we view ourselves, how we see ourselves, not only, like I said, as body image, but spiritually and mentally. Okay, so media is probably the thing that plays the biggest factor in what I found in the research that affects our self-concept. Media is everywhere. It is a ever-growing entity that is just continuing to grow. I mean, you look at it now. We have cell phones, laptops, tablets, touch screens, different forms of media, different forms of technology. There's new social media apps opening daily. You have Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, stuff like that. I mean, there's tons of stuff to express yourself and get your views out to the world, and you can portray yourself as anybody. But there's also the effect of negative perception of yourself coming in because of other people and how they relate to you. So in discussing that, I'm going to talk about how social media and mass media affect our self-concept, our overall body image, and our well-being. And this is a great point in the sense that I feel there is a lot of ground that we can cover, and there were a multitude of different articles in how they relate to our self-concept. Okay, so self-concept. Self-concept, like I said, it's how you view yourself, how you portray yourself. Okay, so the first article I looked at, which I felt was really interesting, dealt with watching music videos or listening to music and how often people read magazines with musicians in them. This study focused on kids in the Washington area, and how often they were, listening to music videos, listening to music in general, I should say, and reading these magazines with musicians in them. They created a 6-point scale, 1 being never and 6 being greater than 7 hours that they spent, consuming this music. So how they did it is, the 6-point scale. They didn't really go into a huge amount of the results, but what I found interesting was that there was a relationship between involvement and how they perceive themselves. There were negative aspects or physical appearances, how they saw themselves, depending on how involved they were with the music and how much they liked the media character that was being presented, in terms of how they portrayed people in their music, whether it be music videos or the songs, or how they were portrayed in the magazines. The second article, which I felt was really cool, it was the first ever study done of its kind, which is they looked at social media usage and the relationship it had with their sexual self-concept. So the first thing they did was they looked at how often kids were on social media sites, such as Facebook. They used a 1 to 8 point scale, 1 being never, 8 being pretty much all day. And the second one was how often they were exposed to sexual images, and they used a 5-point scale there, 1 being never, 5 being almost every day. And they found out that the more they were on these social media sites, the more they were seeing sexual images, so the more they had developed a sexual self-concept and put stuff out and posted different things that may have been more sexually. Uh, One of my favorite articles that I read in this process and went over was this next article that I kind of really like the idea of how they used this study and how they created these experiments to research how playing as an over sexualized female video game character can affect uh, women's self esteem and self efficacy. The way they did this was they created a three-wave panel study in which they had uh, a certain amount of women play uh, as a sexualized video game character for 15 minutes. They had a group play as just a regular video game character for 15 minutes, and they had a control group which was no video game at all. And then after this, they had to create a survey. In dealing with the research, they found that there was no relationship between the first hypothesis, which kind of dealt with self-esteem, but they did find that playing as an over-sexualized video game character does lower self-efficacy because it goes into those stereotypical gender roles of the wife being at home and providing for the family in terms of like cooking, cleaning, stuff like that, which was, I felt really crazy in thinking about it because the study was in 2009, and as of 2009, the video game industry was a $10 billion a year industry, and 40% of gamers that they took a poll of in a survey was actually women, which is crazy. I'd love to know the actual number of that study and whether it was all gamers in general or just online, because I think that would really, be interesting. So going into the next part, which is body image, I feel that this is where the media really plays the biggest factor. Self-concept is huge, and we're going to think about how we think about ourselves no matter what and what anybody says, but people can play you down and make you feel bad about yourself. But a lot of the depth here goes with body image because the media portrays these unrealistic standards that people can't live up to, and it's not really fair to our youth and these kids that are growing up now being told they have to look like this or they have to look like that. In dealing with this, I found a study, and it was quite relieving actually, because I hadn't found a study dealing with guys at this point, and this one was about 104 men ranging from 18 to 35, where the mean age was kind of around 21.4, which was weird. So it shows that there were a lot more younger people in this study. They took them from a university in Australia, which I found really awesome. They were mostly Caucasian. There were some other races involved, but they really don't go into depth. They just say it was mostly Caucasian. So what they did was they wanted to see how showing media portrayed body images, like the ideal standard, which according to this article was that they were muscular yet thin at the core. So very broad shoulders, big chest, big legs, but small waistline. And they had three groups. They had a control group. They had a group that was shown positive images, as in that they were just regular people, average Joes. And then they had the test group, which was shown images of the media's ideal standard. In looking at the results, the people who saw like the regular body images, the average Joes, they felt a lot better about themselves. They didn't necessarily feel down. They thought positively of themselves, and how they viewed themselves. The same with the people who didn't see any males in the commercials. On the other hand, the males that saw the positive, like the media ideal standard. Okay, they they felt more negative about their bodies. They had a lot of dissatisfaction with how they looked. Uh, it's a really hard thing to look at when you're seeing a guy who's just shredded, and you see yourself, and you might not be heavy or anything, you might not be overweight, you might actually be perfect for your size, but because the media portrays it that way, that's just how it goes. um, Another study that was done was the fact that this lady in 1999, she took uh, 9th and 10th grade students. There was about 237 or 437 total students. It was pretty much split, but she took a subsample of only women, and there were 60 of them, and she showed them magazine pictures of, women and how they looked. Um, all the girls in the study wanted to look like the women in the magazines, but they didn't want to. They didn't like the idea, unrealistic images that the authors put in these magazines. Um, this study was done in a diverse area, so it did give some other perceptions, as in African Americans and Latinos were not as affected and didn't really want to strive to look like the women in the magazines because of the way their cultures are and the way they're raised, and that they're comfortable with their body image no matter what. And then going into this, kind of getting into the last point, which is well-being. Um, Social media plays a huge part in that. People can express themselves at any time, and they really have a platform or a way out, if you will, to express themselves. They don't have to be bottled up. They can post at any time and put different things. One thing I found really cool about one of the articles I read in the study that they did is they created an app called Me, and they brought in a big group of people to test it out. Really, they weren't testing the app. They wanted to see if there was a link between sexual self-concept and sexual intensity. How they did this was they had different groups of categories. There were about 7 categories in all, and each category had different pictures. Excuse me. They had people make a profile page. The pictures they posted had a perceived level of sexual intensity. So the pictures they put on their profile gave way to their perceived sexual intensity, whatever it may be, however it was done. A couple of the examples were like Spike TV, We, the women's channel, and like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, some kids things. So it perceived what you liked, and then based on that, it gave what you selected to perceive sexual intensity. So in the testing, they found that there was a positive sexual concept coefficient. So what that means is when the sexual self-concept rose, so did sexual intensity in turn. And I thought that was really cool and really different in terms of how you would look at it. In closing, I just want to talk again about how self-concept is how we see ourselves and how we believe it to be. I think it's very important that we get out there and set the standard that this is who we are, this is how we are, and we're okay with it. I talked about how the media affects self-concept, body image, and well-being, and how they can, manipulate us and deter us from how we should feel and how we should look and how we should act. And I just think it's important. And that's it. Thank you.